right, we're on the home stretch. Well done. Bums are aching, I know it gets, but you stuck it out. And I'll tell you why. The real world metaverse, in which I'm told we'll finally get a definitive answer to, is this a simulation? And I hope somebody amongst you is going to ask the panel, if so, how do I toggle God mode? Because I've been trying to figure that one out. So I'm going to suggest you ask this of the Director of Operations of Draw and Code, board member at AWE, Dave Lorenzini. You go sit there.
Have a seat. All right, so welcome to the end of the first day of AWE Lisbon. It's been an amazing show with an amazing location, new for us, and a lot of exciting stuff on the show floor and on the stage. So I'm Dave Lorenzini. I'm Director of Operations for Draw and Code for the US, and we're building immersive experiences for big brands around the world. And I've got a history with creating worlds with Avi over here. We worked on something called Keyhole that became Google Earth, and I've worked on strategy for Google Glass and projects at Facebook and other things that help reveal a new world around us. And today we're talking about real-world metaverses. And if you hear the word metaverse today, it's most likely you're thinking about distant horizons or Bored Apes in vacant sandboxes. But what we're going to try to get to today at Augmented World Expo is something more immediate and physical and tangible, which is the world around you. So the world's biggest companies are spending billions of dollars to bring these next computing platform to us. And Tim Cook at Apple has called it augmented reality is profound. It's something that you'll never believe you got along without. Meta has over 10,000 people working on devices and environments to connect people in new ways, and Google and Snap are doing the same, with Snap on the leading edge of over 300 million unique daily users, mostly people under 23 years old, using augmented reality every day with filters and social communications. So the future is here, and it's up to us to do something meaningful and interesting with it. So on our stage today, we're privileged to have some of the great minds and dedicated people who are bringing these kinds of better realities into view. And today we're going to talk a bit about where we're at today in 2022, an amazing time, full of magic, and where we're going and how to best get there. So between Avi, Ali, and Kath here, I'll have them introduce themselves, and we'll kick off with Avi, who's worked on some pivotal projects throughout the development of this industry. And why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's happening, where we're at in 2022.
Sure. So hi, I'm Avi Bar-Zeev. I've been at this for over 30 years, starting more so with the VR side, but then got really into the AR side. So among the companies I've worked for, Disney, way back when we were doing Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride. I was at Microsoft where we started the HoloLens. I was the first technical person on the HoloLens working on it. Then worked at Amazon on Echo Frames, which are sort of a very low-end kind of AR, that's audio. And most recently, I worked at Apple, spent 3 years at Apple working on something that I can't talk about. And have a huge passion for especially the AR side of things, because I really believe that this is fundamentally about human-to-human connection and about making the world better. And so AR is all about the world and all about where you are and who you are. What we're not yet seeing is any great examples of what we would call the real-world metaverse, because they're still very siloed examples. They're very limited to a particular game that might be successful, or an app that might be in one city, or not very well tended to yet. Like the numbers of people using these outside of Pokemon Go is still pretty small. So part of our job is to figure out why, what's missing, One of the things we know is missing are the AR glasses that we all want. That makes a big difference to be able to walk around and not have to hold up your phone, but especially in this context to discovery, to be able to find content. You don't want to have to walk around, wait till your phone buzzes, take it out, look and see what was there. You want it to be more ambient and more contextual, and we'll talk more about that later.
Cool. We've also got Ollie from who will talk more about how best to create an open reality. Are we going to end up with a disjointed world? Currently, if you go outside, you'd be hard-pressed to find any persistent or permanent content scattered around the city of Lisbon that we're in today. Moreover, if you look for something that your kids created on Snap, you're not going to find it in Google or Apple's platform when those spin all the way up here shortly either. So the conversation about how to create more of an open web model of a open reality, which is we know is going to be important. Ollie's working on those issues. So why don't you introduce yourself and give us some context there?
Sure. My name is Ali Hantal. I am actually not like Avi or Dave, but still has been working on XR technologies about 8 or 9 years. And that's when I actually moved to Silicon Valley. I was introduced to the technology. And that part was, what really struck me was like, yeah, the future is coming. And then I started my company, XR Masters. I'm also a governing board member of OpenAI Cloud and a member of the Metaverse Standards Forum. And I'm very passionate about working on the interoperability standards and protocols so that we actually can do our job for the generations to come to leave them a world where it is open and democratic. So when we talk about this, we should really think about how the internet started. Internet is open and is interoperable. So anyone who actually sits at home and does an HTML standard website can reach out to the world without the need of going any ISP, a user who's using any ISP, any Windows or Mac iOS operating system, or any browser can reach to that website. We believe the future of Metaverse, which is at the very beginning stage right now, should be thought about right now about the standards and protocols so that we can actually think about an open metaverse that we can write with a capital M instead of multiverses where all these small kind of networks, walled gardens are around. That's why I'm spending a good amount of my time for these nonprofit organizations, and I guess we'll talk about them shortly.
Great, thank you, Ollie. And we also have Kath from Bar-Zeev, whose company Augmented City is on the ground doing things today in this difficult environment of before everything is mature with public and private implementations of open realities or reality-based applications and experiences. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, I'm glad to be here because such kind of events show that we are quite close to the consumer market. Why, when you look at us, technical specialists, because I'm a part of technical world, we are computer vision specialists. When consumer market look at us, they see some geeks, technological geeks, and think that we do some magic to cheat somebody or to do something that is quite unclear, especially the same case we see with Metaverse. So because of some issues, of course, a lot of potential customers think that it's quite unreal to do something there. It's something not clear. It's not clear what kind of business model they can use, what can they implement, how they earn money when they invest in Metaverse. So our goal from the very beginning was to give possibility to end customers, to everybody, to create their own metaverse, their small world. If we talk about a private industrial plant, or we talk about a private gallerist who can show some pictures or whatever, or sell some pictures in Metaverse. So our goal was to give them very simple tools to work with, without any coding, without any special training or whatever. Just one can take a smartphone, scan and prepare a digital twin, and then place any content they want. So we created for all society so-called visual positioning system. So, and it's so easy that even kids, and we proved it with kids of 8 years old, they can play with it and create the digital twin of the school. The fact is that for professors, it was not quite clear how to do with it, because grown-ups were quite terrible with it, with new things, with new technologies or whatever. But when we talk about new generations, when we talk about even kids, small kids, they know how to play with it. And that's why it's important to start from the very beginning to explain to the world that it's not about technology, it's about applications. And it's so nice to work with something new and beautiful, but it shouldn't be very complicated from the very beginning. You have to study this world, you have to make steps, understand how you can apply all these beautiful technologies, this new space, digital space, and create there. So that's our goal.
That's great. Yeah, so we're going to touch on the commercial models that you touched on that'll help make this happen. But in 2022, we're still in this world of augmented reality that we're expecting seems always 2 years away, or always just on the near horizon. So I'd like to talk about some of we're living in a world of friction, basically, whether it's the hardware or the infrastructure to do things. But recently, we've had huge advances with two of the biggest players in the space, with Facebook or Meta releasing the Quest Pro, which will have pass-through cameras that will bring augmented reality to first tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. We have the launch of Apple's anticipated headset coming, again, with the same capabilities, starting with a goggle or VR-based headset that has pass-through cameras that will start teaching people these new augmented experiences. But Avi, maybe talk us through a little bit more of where we're at with the new kinds of tools and infrastructure, like VPSs, visual positioning systems, and other kinds of related developments. Why is the time right now for what's just about to happen?
It's just about the right time. I mean, I think the issue is we've seen what you can do with a smartphone, and it's quite a lot. If you use ARCore, ARKit, you can make some pretty cool spatial apps. And now with various companies having their own versions of VPS, that solves one of the most important and unsolved problems previously was I could create content in the world, but it wouldn't stay where I put it, right? It was not, GPS and radios are not precise enough. And so VPS uses the camera to figure out where exactly are we if we've taken pictures before, and can give us a very good XYZ location and orientation. And so now that's new. That's only been available for the last couple of years. So now you're starting to see companies produce tools that let people put content in space, but we still have the discoverability problem of how does anybody know the content is there before they take it. Well, none of us are going to walk around like this with our phone. We might do it to read Twitter, but we're not doing it to see what's in the world.
Right.
And the key is, I think, with a big change when we see, and by the way, I should be really clear, I'm not saying anything about the company you mentioned and not referring to any products whatsoever. But I think once we do have some sort of walkable AR glasses that are highly transparent and comfortable and stylish, all-day wearable, there's a whole nother talk we can give on what's hard about that. Right? That's been taking a long time. But when we have that, now we're going to have the perfect conditions. We have the software that knows how to put things in the world and find things. We have the hardware that makes the discoverability a lot easier, and things will now be human scale and hands-free. We'll be able to interact with it, and I think that's when things really start to light up. But it's going to go from a desert to a jungle really fast. And what we're still missing is just imagine this transformation when right now, if you hold up your phone, you don't have high confidence you're going to see anything augmented unless you run the right app in the right location. But eventually there's going to be so much stuff that we're going to need the equivalent of a search engine to surf through it all. You're not going to want layers that you turn on and off because each layer will get so big that even the travel or travel for people with strollers, as fine as you want to get, those layers will get big as well over time. And so we need something better than layers or reality channels or whatever you want to call it. You could think of it more like a search engine. You put in keywords and you get back some results, not a million results, hopefully the top 10 that are what you really wanted. And the biggest transformation will be that, I don't know when this is going to happen, but at some point we'll be able to hopefully trust the companies that we buy products from to not abuse our information. So when we get to that point, we'll feel a lot more comfortable about intent and context, because our devices will know that we're looking for lunch place because it's lunchtime and we haven't eaten yet. And it might even know what kind of food we like, or look at our calendar to see that we actually are going to have a lunch at a particular location and give us directions without us having to ask, like we do with the search engine today. You have to prompt it. It will be more implicit. But to do that, the companies have to be trusted because it's some of the most sensitive data that we have. Where are we going? What are we doing? What do we like? And to add to your list, Dave, about products, I would throw in Aria as a good example of this. So this is something that Meta is experimenting with. It's not a product yet, but it's a pair of glasses that have eye tracking and forward-facing cameras. And they're using this in a relatively open way to show everybody what can be gleaned from those kind of sensors. And that information is incredibly personal. So personal that they've had to blur the faces and remove a lot of the information that they're storing because otherwise no one would want to even be a test subject, honestly. So that's what's coming. And we can talk a little later about how are we going to be able to trust these companies given the past and the track records, but that's essentially what we're waiting for is, we used to call this, I tried starting this too early at Microsoft and in 2008 and 2010 again, at the time called it read-write world, essentially a world that you can put things in and they'll stay there and you can share them selectively. Now, just to give it a different name than real-world metaverse, I would just call it the World Wide World. It's effectively the World Wide Web, but on the world, right? It's just the simplest way to explain it. So.
Great.
Yeah, so again, the things that are coming are undisputed, right? We know we're going to live these personalized views of the world that are unique to yourself, and trust is implicit in that happening in the real way. Also social change with, it's nice to have 300 million kids who think about looking at the world in a different way or chasing Pokemon characters around the world. So, or even scanning QR codes to reveal content in places. So we have some things that will help us affect some of the social change. Wanted to talk a little bit about the current applications that people are experimenting today with travel and tourism and business and civic-related stuff that you're doing, Kath. Like, can you tell us what are some of the early examples and successes and real utility that people are responding to on this kind of visual reality?
Well, to be honest, it's quite not simple question, because still our XR technologies show the best results with industry. Because with industry, for them, it's quite clear why they need XR, what they can do with this XR or augmented reality, for example, in the plant, in industrial plant. The case is very simple. The worker can take a device or can put some kind of smart glasses and can maintain or do some job with some kind of machinery. The second case is about education, because some processes, it's very difficult to imagine. Books cannot explain us the reaction of, I don't know, some kind of, some skin on some cream, or the reaction of our body to some kind of pharmaceutical product or whatever, or atomic reaction. How can you explain to kids of 16 years old what it is? You should show video, but it's not very clear from the very beginning. So when you put the big model of a cell and you show how it works and you can interact with it, you memorize it better. So that's why education needs it. So they need us. They need good graphics. They need simple devices for kids, very simple devices, not very expensive devices, because universities cannot spend a lot of money if we don't talk about special universities with special fundings, but normal universities, normal schools. So they need us, and they understand what we do, and they understand how we can help them to teach and to keep lectures for kids. So, for example, in our case, we started with history. It was a mess because young generations, they don't want to learn history. Most of kids, they don't care. So my daughter of 16 years old, she doesn't care. She needs only a cell phone, a smartphone, and she needs to play with it somehow. But when you put some kind of interaction and you talk about history, it's nice. They want to do it, so they captured by it. The third place belongs to tourism, but tourism still does not understand how they can turn the money back. So we work a lot with municipalities. Because we are from Italy, and in Italy we have small villages, small beautiful fortresses and everything. And sometimes it's very difficult to explain because we don't have a lot of money in Italy to do some kind of reconstruction. So we have to invent some easy ways to reconstruct, but we don't want to pay too much. So XR helps to do it. We can take a fortress that you don't see even a fortress, and you can add something in augmented reality, some effects or whatever, and you have a case for tourism. Or, for example, you can put a guide, and the guide can explain you what you see.
Right.
And the third case belongs to advertising and brand promotion. Now we work a lot with events because to install something, for example, with our application, or like we did in the morning today with Ali, it takes only 10 minutes. And now you can see on our booth wonderful forest with some strange mushrooms.
Magic forest.
Magic forest with strange mushrooms, interactive mushrooms with beautiful trees. And it's nice, it's interactive, it's beautiful. So it's for events and for brands. So you can imagine, for example, if we talk about Bayer and they want to show something beautiful about new article or item, pharmaceutical item. So it's not very fancy to show the presentation, but it's fancy when you can see the exact installation, where you can play, you can interact with it. So it's brand promotion. Of course, you understand the case of big brands when they give you possibility to see wonderful installations without touching any surface or any building. So you don't need, we are sustainable in Europe. I don't know in the US, but we are sustainable in Europe. We don't want to touch historical buildings. We cannot touch them, it's forbidden. To get any permission from the municipality, it's a mess. You have to start talking with them 1 year before to make an event. To make a billboard, it's worse. So, of course, Metaverse is the case. You can put any video, you can put any installation without touching anything. So, and they understand it. That's why, of course, it works. But still, for the mass market, it's a new thing. And to be honest, of course, IP is very important. Of course, working with private data is very important. But when the consumer market doesn't understand what's it all about, when it's so difficult for them to understand if they have to use smartphone or they have to invest and buy some kind of smart glasses and to go to do shopping with smart glasses, me personally, I'm not ready to put smart glasses and to do shopping because nobody sees my face. And
that's
it's
a
quite
challenge. If we continue to rehash what's been done with the first web and make the same mistakes with selling attention and advertising in ways that are not appreciated by users, we're failing to take advantage of this opportunity that we're gifted with. And we're personally at Draw and Code, we're working on a project in Malta, and we're starting with the interplay between local and non-local visitors. So it's not, the local visitors might be doing AR, the remote visitors are getting a virtual view, but it's more about how to interact real people in a place with non-local people visiting that as well, with content that's meaningful. And we've had conversations about what's important on getting the ability to have free content into the world, but have it meaningful to the person, as Avi touched on. We have to get this level of trust up where you're relying upon your systems and hardware and services to be more of big mother than a big brother watching what you do. When a visitor comes to Malta, beautiful country full of history, they could have an incredibly rich experience by seeing holograms of Caravaggio on the street leading you through the old town of Valletta, and to see their path through that city long after they left. Their children could see it generations later. But you have to trust and rely upon that information is going to be used exclusively for your benefit and not be sold to other people. And Avi's leading an organization called the AR Guild that is working to have a values-based kind of approach to developing this future, but it's also a partnership with the public and private governments and standards organizations. And Ollie, can you tell us some of the groups that are tackling some of these issues and problems that you've been working with? I know you're on the board of the AR Cloud, Open AR Cloud. What else?
There is actually there's a few of them. There's a Spatial Web Foundation, Open Geospatial Consortium partnered with OpenAI Cloud, and we have been working on a universal geopose encoding standard with them. But IEEE is also in there, and Kronos Group, of course, is working on that as well. And last June, the Metaverse Standards Forum was created, which actually is very exciting, because now we are together with all these standards groups, companies who are thinking about the future of the human civilization with all these amazing technologies that are coming up. And with over 1,700 members right now, which is only in 3-4 months, we reached to 1,700 members at the Standards Forum. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see those limited number of organizations are not doing the same thing. Plus, if there's any where that we don't have any working groups working on, we are trying to get that done there as well, so that we can get organized better. And there are right now 5 exploratory working groups proposals. One of them was what I'm very involved in and just approved, was the virtual real world integration working groups. So these working groups, there's one with AI, there's one with 3D asset standards, there's another one for avatars. So we're trying to tackle here different groups, and we have a long way to go, of course.
It can't be open, at least make it interoperable. That's a good clue. And Avi, you've played a part in a lot of these things that have gone on and scaled. What do we have to get right for building a foundation for, again, a world that we want, instead of a world that will be given to us or?
Yeah, I'll just start with an observation. I think that the Metaverse Standards Forum is doing it right. I'm very supportive, and I show up to those meetings too. Traditionally, I personally don't have a lot of patience for being on committees and debating standards. So I usually opt out of that part myself, but I'm not the right temperament for it. But there's an old XKCD joke, which is like, there are 14 standards out there, so we're going to write a 15th to unify them all, and then everybody use that. And then the next thing is now there are 15 standards. And it just makes it worse. But I think the MSF is trying to do the opposite. They're trying to survey what's out there and unify and bring those together, which is, I think, the right thing to do.
They have a track record of getting it right.
So what needs to happen still? I think, one of the things that's worth mentioning is, Dave and I both worked at Keyhole early on. He started right as I was leaving. But Keyhole became Google Earth, and now it's integrated with Maps. It's a great achievement. It's had, it was already a decade ago when they reached the first billion downloads, right? You do 1 billion of anything, that's hopefully a good thing. And there's only a few bad stories I've heard about how it's been unfortunately used, but almost everything is positive, right? So really good project, but it never went far enough, because what we tried to do originally was not just build a map of the Earth. That's okay, that's useful. Everybody always wants to find their home, where they grew up. Everybody does the same thing. But what we really needed to do, and still needs to be done, is a geo-browser. Effectively, this is what AR needs, is this notion of a piece of software that's just like a web browser, but it's for spatial information. And what that results in is everybody putting their spatial information out there in the same way that we publish web pages today or put data sets out there. We need a way for everybody who has proprietary data that they're afraid to share it under a safe regime, that we can combine data sets together and build a sum that's greater than the whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. We're not there yet, and Google Earth never quite went that far. We had a thing called KML, which was an older standard for how to pull geospatial data together, but it was missing links. It was missing the most important part of web pages, which is this content points to this content, so you can discover it, and you could actually build a search engine eventually that could take the web and make it very accessible. We don't really have that for geospatial yet. So I'd say that's one of the things we need, but now given all our experience over the last especially 10 years with privacy, we need to build it a little differently. It can't just be something crawls all the geospatial data and compiles it into one centralized searchable database. That might be the most efficient way to do it, but it's not the best. What we need is our personal devices to be thought of more like your personal home firewall, right? In your house, you have a firewall that prevents the internet from getting to you, but you can still get out. You can still query the internet. So we're going to need this notion of a personal firewall where our personal data is kept secure, away from any company, frankly, so that only we share the data when we want to. And that's built into a lot of the Web3 ideas in terms of verifiable credentials, decentralized identity, this idea that we're going to be the shepherds of our data in the future, and companies have to ask us for small bits of it when they need it. And even then, we can do it with a zero-knowledge proof so that they only can answer the question they wanted to answer, but they can't record our birth date. They can tell we're old enough, but they don't know when we were born, right? So that needs to happen as well, and I think we're moving further on. Unfortunately, that's the part of Web3 that nobody ever talks about, right? That's the most important part, is fixing identity. It's been broken forever. But in the future, those personal firewalls will have enough context about what we want to need that they'll be able to go out and get it. They'll be able to ask the questions, and even the questions need to be thought about, because if I query a server, let's say a Google server, if I make a query to that server, Google records the fact that I asked about that. So now they know something about me because I was interested in something. So we even need to obfuscate the request for data. That's why I'm thinking about it as a whole new piece of software. That's sort of your personal world browser. That's effectively what we need, and we just don't have that yet.
But not only data, right, Avi, the browser should be also owned by that trusted entity, right? I mean, not only the data, but the browser itself.
Sure, all the executable parts of it as well are super important. And actually, nobody knows this, but the first version of Keyhole that we built was fully scriptable inside. It had the KML came out of an internal scripting language that let you re-engineer or redesign the purpose of the app to do anything so that you could write programs. But that comes coupled with the security measures needed so that somebody can't write a program that goes and takes my personal data and sends it to a website, right? We need to be able to filter that.
So they kept the XML structure but lost the logic that would have made things more interesting. And recently we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the other new factor that we have in building these real worlds is all of the new Web3 technology, right? So whether it's authentic digital goods or NFTs or smart contracts or proof of actual presence or all sorts of things that's giving us new business models, new technology, new platform tools, and everything else. And if you haven't read it, Avi wrote an article about that really helps to think about Web3 in the context of scarcity versus abundance. Can you touch on that? and
Yeah,
talk about?
it's a much longer conversation, but the short version of it is, and if anybody wants the longer version, I got to publish it better, but I did a talk at the last Gatherverse that was half an hour on this whole topic.
Yeah.
So the real short version is, we are making some of the same mistakes again with Web3 that we made with Web 1 and Web 2. I think we have to acknowledge that. There's a lot of people who are new, so they don't necessarily know the history. They're missing that. So it's for those of us who've been around, we have to educate and share the learnings from all that time. And there's a lot of stuff we've learned, but there's a few things that are new. And one of them is, as an example, people got very excited about NFTs for good reasons. It's a way for artists to finally get paid for their digital work. And artists have been suffering for a while. They've been taking jobs they don't want instead of doing what they're really passionate about to pay the bills. So we want them to get paid. But unfortunately, in the process, we've created a technology that's kind of inferior. NFT doesn't really give you any rights. It doesn't really, the contract when you bought it can, but the NFT itself doesn't really do much for you. But what it does do, unfortunately, is it creates a mindset where we are trying to impose artificial scarcity on things that are naturally abundant. Like, we can figure out a way to make sure artists get paid, but also make sure that everybody who wants to see their work can see their work, and it doesn't get taken off the internet like the Charlie bit my finger video. Somebody bought it, took it down. Like, that's not the end result we want. We want to share. And but it's the fact that we're trying to commercialize scarcity that's causing the problems here. We need to figure out how to actually make abundance work so that everybody who needs to get paid can get paid, and if something doesn't make any money, everybody at least gets credit. And the people, if the end product does make money, that flows back to the original authors. Music, oddly, is the field that's the furthest along with licensing models and the ability to split revenues. And it's still not pretty, but it's the furthest along. We need to solve that for other kinds of art, and especially for content in space, because it's going to be a lot of data sets. A lot of people's proprietary data is going to be coming together to mix and match. So we got to protect it. We got to make sure that it's safe, but we shouldn't be so concerned with trying to make sure there's only one copy everywhere. That's a false goal that causes us to hurt ourselves. It's almost, the analogy I give is, it's almost as if we've invented Star Trek replicators that can make anything, and then we put a little coin op on it and said, no, you can't use it because it's too valuable. We're going to make sure we limit that. And that's not what we want to do. The internet is the sea of abundance, so let's design for the strengths of the internet and not try to impose new weaknesses.
But still, blockchain gave us a lot when we integrate blockchain with Metaverse. It's a beginning of maybe some kind of bigger process, because with blockchain we at least can secure something and we can do some operations without going out from Metaverse. So before it was not possible. Right? So, and the big step to do still is to maybe work with some kind of moving objects, because now still we resolve the problem with stable surfaces or stable space, making some kind of digital twin, but still we don't know how to connect some fixed digital twin stuff with some moving goals. For example, if I look at the bus that is moving, I cannot put anything right now because we don't know how to do it still, but we are working with it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually in this organization, in Open Our Cloud, we talk a lot about it because we are all, mostly all technicians there, and we see the technical limits that we have right now, and still we don't know how to resolve it, but we are working hardly.
I have some ideas, actually, I should talk to you later. One of the things I worked on was Prime Air, and we had to be able to track moving targets all the time.
And have you succeeded?
The system we built did work. I don't know if it'll scale to what you need. We'll talk later. We'll see if it'll meet your needs.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's leave this discussion because it's not resolved still. So it cannot be used for multiple users, for a housewife or for a kid who can just get the information about arriving bus.
Yeah, let's talk offline.
I know.
Definitely.
I'll give you some ideas.
Maybe you did something good. Also, we, for example, we did something good in the past for automotive because we work a lot with cars without pilots, industrial cars. Yeah. And of course we did it, but we are at the very beginning. Not we personally, I mean our technological world.
Absolutely. What you bring up is there are lots of classes of data that are hard. Moving data is hard.
Managed
Temporary
data
data is hard. Yes.
And we don't know how to manage them.
But there are all these categories, and yes, we have to span all of them. And the buses are actually one of the easier ones to do because we know where the buses are. We just have to integrate some format that tells us over time where they are. But then there's other kinds of data which you have to deal with, like proprietary data, which can't be baked into anything else. We don't allow derivatives necessarily. Also, offensive data is something we have to figure out how to manage. Something that might, from one group that might offend another group, may not want to be at the same layer, for lack of a better term. We may want to specialize that, and for purposes of, for countries that have free speech, then they may protect that right to say anything. Other countries may want to have laws that regulate what people are allowed to say. So there's like 7 or 8 categories of hard things to do, including moving data. Keeping it up to date is one of the hardest things. You've seen, the Google Street View cars ride the same roads over and over again because stuff changes. And you want to be able to show the latest. And very often they can only show something within 6 months of the latest because that's the frequency that they drive. But we all have devices now. And so companies like Niantic will be able to take you playing the game and holding up your phone and taking pictures. Any of these VPS systems can do this and use it as a way to update the database so that over time, the database is kept in sync with reality. So when a sign changes or a road closes, that becomes part of what we need to do.
That's something we found at Keyhole and through other projects is building the world is a difficult task. And the best way to do it is basically every way possible. So you can play it into space, you can involve the government and get spatial layers and do all sorts of things, but the end result is not just a layer spatial stack of city layers, imagery, roads, and stuff. We have this new dimension of people and people through time. And there's companies like Living Cities, Matt Miesniks and friends are doing a great effort to explore some of that kind of stuff. Check that out. But we've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to talk about the people who are watching this on YouTube who understand that maybe virtual worlds are not the place to put their precious time in development, and to try to build these better realities. How would you counsel someone, what are some of the tools and things, but how would you counsel someone to start building reality layers that are purposeful, persuasive, entertaining narratives into the world that have meaning and can live on? So, Ali.
Yeah, actually, I believe first thing is we should really get people understand that this technology, how does technology work? How does this technology work? And basically, the main layer of visual positioning system that is required in the world right now, which is another topic that we're trying to tackle at getting that VPS not owned by, like you were talking about, like the browser, not owned by one company. And it should be like an open VPS, which is a long way to go. But we are actually also working on that at OpenAI Cloud to be able to give the world a free open VPS system where nobody has to pay anyone, which is a long way to go. Yeah. But what we do is we have test beds under OpenAI Cloud, and we work with high schools, universities, municipalities around the world, and we try to get them out there, and they scan the world with Augmented City VPS, and we have different platforms of our partners, and basically we go to these kids and ask them, teach them how to create for 3D models and experiences for this world, and then they can upload their own work, and then they can place it persistently that is synchronously experienced by many users. And this way, I believe we are trying, this way I think we're getting the world understand what this new world is about. And when we do that, I believe then we can start talking about standards and openness and what importance the data, privacy, and all of that, which we missed during the fourth industrial revolution, right? I think that's why we believe in getting the word out there and showing the new generations to come and the parents, this is the new world that we're all talking and excited about.
They don't need to be 3D modeling experts. With generative art and things, we're literally lowering the bar to being able to speak your imagination into view, which is stunning. It's happened in the last 6 months to a year, everything is changing. And it doesn't also have to be highly visual. We're creating a copy of the country of Malta, and then visitors can just use the headphones in their ears to pick up spatial tags and stand in front of a church and hear about it in their own language, in 40 different languages, to get an audio experience that enriches their time in that space. So it's really, there's lots of ways to go about it. Avi, what should people be working on if they want to build these kinds of new worlds?
I mean, I would encourage anybody who's interested in this to, even though it might be a long-term financial concern, use what's existing today. Build on what's there, and it's not perfect, but it's a good start. So you have raw ARKit, AR Core. You've got toolkits that are starting to wrap those and go at a higher level. You have Niantic with the Lightship SDK. There's a lot of tools out there, and you can choose which company you want to work with. The most important thing right now is to see which ideas stick and which resonate with people, right? That's the part I think that's been largely missing, and it's a risk. You don't necessarily know. You can prototype it. My job is often as a prototyper to start things from a blank slate, try them. But in the lab, it gets as far as showing it to a bunch of designers and executives and seeing what they think, and they're the proxy for the end customer. If you can get it out there cheaply, as cheaply as possible, and see what resonates with people, you're going to have a much better set of feedback to decide, this has legs, this could actually work, this is something that could scale. And if you just wait a little longer, then more platforms will be there. So you won't be locked into one platform. You can start with the best choice today, whichever that is for you, and know in the future, you'll have an open source alternative, you'll have meta platforms, not the company, but the idea that it goes above the existing platforms, that you can write once and it'll run across different phones and services, right? That's happened with every other API. It happened with graphics APIs, it happens with maps. So somebody will do the hard work of unifying these things, but you can focus on the application layer and answering the question, what's the value for the customer? Why would people do this? That still remains theoretical. I have a lot of answers, but I haven't been able to prove any of them so far because I've been working at a different part of the pipeline. But I'd encourage you to try that and see what sticks. And you might wind up with another Pokemon Go, or you might at least have a modest success at that. So I think it's worth thinking about.
There's no easy way to do this. Whether you're trying to convince a group of venture capitalists to give you money to build something that you feel strongly about, or working inside of big corporations. I once asked Avi, how do you get a project like HoloLens through the bureaucratic layers and the hundreds of millions of dollars and resources committed to go forward? And your answer to me was something along the lines of, build the smallest useful part that's irrefutable and get out of its way, right? So I thought that was great advice. And how can people get involved with your platform, Kath, and contribute?
Our platform is just available, it's open. So, and actually more platforms like we have in the world, more people can play with it, because for us, for a small company, it's quite difficult to play with big budgets for marketing and to publish it everywhere. So I think it's important to understand that anyway, Metaverse should be crowdsourced, so it should be open, and everybody can just find some kind of tool, like, for example, everybody knows Snapchat, and every development company right now knows how to play with Snapchat. That's the case. So it should be easy. And for kids and for people who want to create, they need to create using Metaverse. When it's used, it's half a deal done, right? And I want to tell one thing. 5 years ago, it was very difficult for me to talk about it. Now, for example, even in Italy, in Bari, when I talk about Metaverse, it's much more easier for me to talk about it. And our potential customers and people with whom we work, they have a lot of different ideas. The only problem for us is to implement these ideas technically, because sometimes they want something that doesn't exist. So that's the case. They have a lot of ideas. Some people want to do castles that, I don't know, fly. Some people want to do something with integration of something else. But at the end of the day, we are at the very beginning on technical level, and we still have to do a lot of things to mature our technologies.
Yes.
And especially we should be careful when we do some kind of advertising and hype, because all of us suffered when big companies announced something beautiful, and then when we saw it on the market, it was not beautiful at all. And nobody understood what it was and what for it was. That's the case. But for end customers, for consumer market, it was quite bad, because then they lost some kind of trust to Metaverse. So we hope that it will not happen again.
Yeah, we're talking about stuff that truly has to be experienced to be understood. And coming to conferences like AWE, or going to places where you can put on a headset, the new MetaQuest Pro with the pass-through, or the new Apple, all these things will crystallize these visions for people. And I'd like to challenge people to, again, work to build better realities instead of virtual worlds and game spaces that might have a limited impact and reach. So I think we're out of time, but if you have any questions, let me know, and come up to the mics, and we can continue the discussion at the evening event later. Question?
So like all of you, I'm so excited about VPS, especially with Eighth Wall's recent release. I'm wondering, do either of you or any of you have specific use cases that gets you really excited with VPS, or localized augmented reality experiences?
So the gaming and entertainment space, again, music and entertainment itself, there's a lot of passion, and gaming and entertainment is clearly, with Pokemon Go, with billions of people and over $5 billion worth of people buying bags of gold to run things around. It's interesting. The travel and tourism industry is a really strong play for knowledge and registering things through time, seeing places through different times that they were existing, and yeah. Any other favorite killer apps?
In the spirit of trying to make the world a better place, and that's really what AR is about, I really like applications that focus on building community. Communities, used to be very local, and we got spread out, and you may not even know your neighbor anymore, but these tools could really help us make every location a really special place for the people who live there, for the people who are around. So those are my favorite, personally.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think that's it for us, and thank you again from AWE Lisbon, and we will see you in a better future going forward. Thanks.
Okay.